Hello everyone and welcome to the Tank Club. Today we're going to be having a look at the new champion points for the Waking Flame patch. I'm going to go over everything you need, everything you want, and kind of why you might use some of the champion points. We've got a lot of new CP that have been added with the Waking Flame patch, which is why I'm doing this video. So this is an update of a guide to the CP 2.0 system with the Waking Flame patch for tanking. So we will start off with the green CP. So a lot of people ask me what green CP shall I use. It doesn't really make a lot of difference, but we'll just quickly go over the things that are useful to have. First of all, Breakfall is kind of good because it reduces your fall damage. There are situations in content where you are thrown in the air. Something that springs to mind for me is Cloud Rest. When you jump up on the wall in Cloud Rest and then you jump down again, that will be reduced by fall damage. So it's not a huge deal. It's not a big deal. But it will mean, obviously, a little bit less healing every time you jump off the wall or for whatever reason. And in other content as well, where you're thrown in the air, it's very useful to have. Steadfast Enchantment, obviously, your weapon enchants last longer, so it's worth having. You don't have to slot it. Nice and easy. Treasure Hunter is a vital one for me because especially if you are kind of newer to tanking, you're still going to be needing your tank gear. Obviously, when you open a chest, you want that gear to be more chance of being the gear that you want, and you've got more chance of it being a set item with the Treasure Hunter passive. So this is pretty important. Okay, the one down here, Out of Sight, reduces the radius you can be detected while sneaking by 1 meter per stage. 3 meter bonus. Obviously in heavy armor, you've got a bigger detection radius, so if you're trying to sneak through some kind of things, it can be nice to put points into this. It's not needed to be slotted, so that can be useful if you're trying to sneak around. Okay, next one, Rationer, increases the duration of your food. Like I say, these are all optional. There's no must-haves here. They're just whatever you want. So this is a slottable. I like to use it when I'm in content. So Rationer for me, add another 30 minutes to your food. Okay, the next slottable, Liquid Efficiency. Whenever you use a potion, you have a 10% chance not to consume it. So you just use a potion and it doesn't charge you the potion. Another really important one, Steed's Blessing. Increases your movement speed by 20% when you're out of combat. So this is quite good when you're running in between fights, when there's no ads attacking you. Get in there quicker. Obviously as a tank, you want to be at the front. So that is a very important one. Onto the Warfare CP, the blue CP. In terms of slottables now, you can kind of say that these are pretty much locked in for most situations. So in terms of slottable CP, Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, Unassailable, and the new Ironclad, those are your best ones to go with. For a tank, you can slot other stuff if you want. This is just a standard kind of thing. There is no reason not to use them really as a tank. In previous patches we used Bulwark potentially. That's not as essential now because of the red CP. So you're going to see in a second. But basically when I switched off Bulwark and I slotted Ironclad instead, there was a bigger damage reduction by having Ironclad than Bulwark. So I've just switched it around and I've gone for the Ironclad instead. In terms of your other CP there, just everything that's not a slottable. So Tireless Discipline, Eldritch Insight. You've got a few over here. You've got Blessed. Down here we've got Enlivening Overflow. If you are in a 1 tank 3 damage dealer group for dungeons, you might consider slotting this to give your group and yourself more recovery for a 50% uptime. Obviously with this, as you can see, it's a 104 bonus right now, but that is completely unbuffed. And if I was in combat fully buffed up, this is going to jump quite a bit more. So it's worth slotting in that situation if you can afford to lose one of the other passives. Okay, other stuff, we've got Precision, you might as well take it. Over here we've got Extended Might Section, you might as well take Piercing. These ones become quite important, so Flawless Ritual increases the chance to apply a magical status effect by 30%. So this includes Minor Brittle, that's why this is important. So if you're not using Frost Clench, if you want to try and increase your Brittle uptime, this is something you need to slot. You've also got War Mage, these are non-slottables, so obviously when you get to the higher areas of the champion points, sort of 1,600 plus, this is when you start to take all these extra ones to add more damage to your skills. It's not essential, but it's nice to have later on when you're trying to push higher content, where you want to add and incorporate a little bit of damage. So as a tank, some tanks can hit between 6 and 10k DPS, just with their regular tank gear, regular tank skills, thanks to this CP. So you want to slot these. Battle Master as well, nice to have, especially for certain things. In terms of optional CP here, you could go for something like Last Stand, so you gain Major Heroism for more ulti gain. If you're in a situation where you can guarantee you are going to drop low in health, so Cloud Rest springs to mind in the execute phase, you've got a situation where your health is going to drop under 20%, this is going to get procced. So in that situation, this is kind of worth using potentially there so you can get your ults back faster. The other one's not really that vital, so Reinforced could be there. Bulwark you could use if you plan on taking, like, if you know for certain you're not going to take any area of effect damage, then obviously this is useless. So then you would obviously slot Bulwark instead. If you know for a fact you're not going to have one single damage over time ability, then slot Bulwark instead. If you're trying to maximize damage reduction, obviously you just need to look at these and think, well, am I going to be taking that type of damage? If not, then slot something else. So slot your Bulwark, slot your Last Stand, slot something like that. If you are struggling for self-healing, maybe you are doing pickup groups for dungeons or something like that. Maybe you're on something like a Templar tank, you want to boost your healing over time. So the Templar tank has lots and lots of healing over time. Obviously, you could use some points to boost the amount of healing you can do. If you're using Echoing Vigor for your group, you might want to use that as well. Or if you need a single target heals or whatever. So you might use something like one of these healing skills if you need to for those situations. Onto the red CP, there's a lot of like customization with the red CP. So for me personally, obviously you want to take everything that's a non-slottable and useful for a tank. So Tumbling, Defiance, you've got a lot of things in here. So Sprinter, Hero's Vigor, Mystic Tenacity. There's a lot of things, even to the point where you would take things like Tempered Soul. If you were a progression group, obviously you want to get rezzed with 10% more resources. That's kind of nice to have. If you're running in pickup groups, you might often have to res your group members, so decrease the time it takes to resurrect allies for like dungeon groups that are kind of in the dungeon queue. The most important stuff, obviously we've got Tireless Guardian, as we've mentioned in the past, really, really useless CP passive. It doesn't give you 40% block cost reduction when using sturdy gear. It's about 18. So just remember that you're spending 20 points here to get 18 block cost reduction if you kind of capped out on everything else like your sturdy gear. Fortification, not really worth using anymore. Obviously, when you get to sort of 1,800 to 2,000 CP, you might as well take it. But things like that are not as worth it now because it's 4% block mitigation for 30 points. And then when you look at this one, this is the most important CP now. So Nimble Protect is kind of nice. Increase your movement speed by 6% while blocking or bracing. But Bracing Anchor, so this was added this patch. It's a new one. It's also already been kind of nerfed with an incremental patch on PC, and it's still very, very strong. So it does reduce your damage by a considerable amount still, even though it's been nerfed. The reason for the nerf is because it was not working correctly. So we did contact the devs, we did submit bug reports saying that it was definitely broken, it was offering too much damage reduction. We were getting something like a 50% damage reduction with this before the nerf. Now not so much, but it still reduces damage by a considerable amount while blocking. So that's the important thing. It's only while you're blocking. It's block mitigation. So you get 20% block mitigation for 50 points. So obviously it's much more beneficial than getting the Fortification now, which is 4% for 30 points. You do get a speed reduction, a movement speed reduction of 16%. It's not really a huge amount noticeable. It's a problem for ad pulls. It's a problem in between fights. It does slow you down a bit. However, on boss fights, you won't really notice much of a difference. So obviously you have got Nimble Protector, which offers you 6% movement speed. So it's not quite as bad when you've got, obviously, 20% block mitigation. In boss fights, it's not really much of an issue. So this is really, really important. For me, this is a vital CP passive for this patch because it just makes life super easy. Like fights in the past that you might have found difficult and it's a lot of damage, now it's going to be considerably lower. With this, you're at the block mitigation cap. The block mitigation cap is 90%. If you're wearing 5 pieces of heavy armor, you're probably going to be at 70% block mitigation already without this. When you then slot this, that takes you up to the 90% block mitigation cap. If you've got any more than 90%, it's kind of wasted because you don't need more than 90%. 90%, you're not able to mitigate more than 90% with block mitigation. Block mitigation is capped at 90%. So yeah, Brace and Anchor, very, very good even after the nerf. We've got Ward Master here. This is an optional CP passive. This is mostly going to be used by Dragon Knights and maybe Templar tanks. So what you have to do is you have to be blocking and have a damage shield active. So Igneous Shield and blocking, and then your damage is going to be reduced by 10%. So quite a big buff for yourself. So 10% damage reduction is quite a lot. And as a DK, there's a good chance you're going to be using a lot of Igneous Shields anyway. So if you are in a really, really high damage situation, you could use this as well. And that's going to work, like I say, while blocking and casting Igneous Shield, you're going to get a 10% damage reduction. So it can be nice. I personally haven't really been using this one because we're already taking such low damage because of bracing anchor and stuff that I didn't find this completely necessary to use. Other slottables, so they really are up to you. So let me start from this side. So Boundless Vitality, increasing your max health. I like to slot this for a lot of stuff apart from Cloud Rest. For dungeons, for trials, for arenas, I kind of like having it. But you don't absolutely need it. If you've got over 40k health already without this, then you can use this slot for something else. So you don't have to use Boundless Vitality. I like to have it, but you don't have to have it. You could easily slot something else. As long as you're kind of over 40k max health, you can do pretty much all content in the game and then just slot something else on your CP. The next one, Fortified, increases your armor. So when it's capped out, 1731 armor. That's resistances, basically. And it's not really necessary. So the only time this is actually effective is when you're not blocking. So let's say you've got the Bracing Anchor CP. When you are using Bracing Anchor, resistance, like all your resistances are kind of not as important anymore. Because you're already reducing damage by such a huge amount that resistances have almost no impact whatsoever. It's really kind of up to you. So in any situation where you're taking unblocked damage, this could be useful. So I'm going to use Cloud Rest as an example again. So when you're fighting Zamaja as the main tank and you kite in the darkness, typically you wouldn't be blocking. You'd be just running around. So having Bulwark and Fortified could be really useful because it's a lot of resistances. But usually it wouldn't matter. And also going into the portal, those resistances might be quite nice to have. But yeah, it's really up to you. Like if you need to use this, then use it. I'm only using it situationally when I am not blocking certain attacks. So when I'm taking a lot of unblocked damage, that's when this comes into play. But for me, it's not even that important anymore because of Bracing Anchor. So when I'm tanking, I'm usually playing as the main tank, especially for main tanks. You're going to be blocking a lot. Bracing Anchor is the most important CP passive for tanks, for main tanks. So Fortified is not really needed in that situation. Rejuvenation, I've not even slotted anymore. I don't even put the points in there. 50 points for 90 recovery is a really expensive CP tree. It's completely a waste, in my opinion, to use that now. I'd much rather use pretty much anything else. I think even combining something like Slippery and Expert Evasion would be more valuable than wasting points on something like Rejuvenation. On that note, onto Slippery. So this, basically, you don't use this to automatically break free for you, unless you've got kind of problems with seeing when to break free. So if you don't know when you've got to break free from an attack, this is going to be really good to use. So slot this if maybe that's you. Maybe you don't realise when you need to break free, so this would be good for that situation. If you're somebody who reacts really quickly to break frees, then obviously it's not worth it. The most valuable thing about this is it breaks you free for free, so it costs nothing. That's the only time that this is really good. So if you're in a situation where you're using a lot of stamina and there's a stun mechanic, you can kind of use this to negate the cost of break free, because break free can cost anywhere up to sort of 5k stamina. That is a lot of stamina to use to break free. It is going to take a second or so for it to realise you need to break free and then for the Slippery CP to activate. So it's not exactly the most reliable thing, but it does help negate the cost of breaking free if you're having particular problems with that kind of thing. Down to the next one, Expert Evasion. Free dodge roll every 30 seconds. So again, another thing, if you're wearing 5, 6, 7 pieces of heavy, this is going to be really, really nice to use. So you get a free dodge roll once every 30 seconds. As a tank, I've seen some people say they never dodge roll, and I think you're making a big mistake if you're not ever dodge rolling, because sometimes when you take a lot of damage, the easier option is just to dodge roll and avoid it. So the only time you can't dodge roll an attack is something that's channeled and it's locked in on your character. But other attacks that are like swipes and cleaves and AoEs and single target attacks, you can dodge roll them. So you should try to avoid some damage. You can't always rely on your healer. You can't always rely on your self-healing and other resources. You can just dodge roll. Especially if you've got one free every 30 seconds, you might as well make use of that. And if you are somebody who dodge rolls, this is going to be really helpful. It's free. So obviously this passively just improves sustain. For me, it's one of the ones that I use quite often. But I try and time it for a situation where I am dodge rolling quite a lot. Sustained by Suffering. Increases your health, magicka, and stamina recovery by 150 when it's maxed out. So this is now the one that I use, and I only really use it when I know that I'm going to be dealing with situations with negative effects and where I really need resources. So again, like another example, V-Hoff on the first boss where I'm constantly being hit by poison, I'm getting lightning thrown on top of me, I've got lots of like negative effects. This isn't just This isn't status effects. That's an important thing to note. So it's not status effects, which means negative effects are anything that impacts your character in a negative way. So there is a lot of negative effects in the game. Other champion point things say status effects, and it's quite hard to obtain status effects in PvE content sometimes, so that's not really that useful. However, this one is useful because there are a lot of situations. So even if you're affected by bleed damage, or if you're affected by poison, or lightning, or any kind of dot, this is going to be procced. Like, even... There's so many things that proc this sustained by suffering. Even just being heavy attacked by an ad, they can apply some kind of debuff to your character, and then this procs. So this is activated almost from anything. I can proc this from a Kaguti just light attacking me. Like, this will proc in that situation. So it's worth having it. This is now your way of sustaining, but obviously you won't be able to see this sustain outside of combat because it will only work when it's procced in combat. Other slottables that we've got Shield Master, reduces the cost of your damage shields by 2%. If you're a Templar tank, you might be using Radiant Ward in that situation, it's 10% cheaper. If you're a DK, you might be using Ignite Shield, 10% cheaper. Even Barrier, because the Barrier is a shield, the ultimate, that means it's 10% cheaper. So there's a lot of things that are affected by this. If you are in a situation where you need it, then it's worth using. Even things like Defensive Stance class as this, because you get a damage shield with Defensive Stance. So Locustes range tanking, you have to have Shield Master slotted, because when you do that, it's reducing the stamina cost of your defensive stance by 10%. So it's really, really useful, really, really valuable for that situation. If you're in high damage situations and you really value the damage shields that you're using, so like I say, Igneous Shield, maybe you spam Igneous Shield quite a lot and you want to get a bit more of effectiveness from it, I would personally prefer to go with the Shield Master one to cast it more often, but some people might prefer to go with Bastion to increase the size of the shield. So this is something you could go with if you want to. Strategic Reserve increases your health recovery. So this is especially useful, very, very situationally for like high damage environments. One of my personal favourite places is doing the portal in Cloud Rest, or any situation where there's no healer. So any situation where you don't have a healer, this is useful. So my main one is Cloud Rest in the portal. We're able to stack health recovery. So when we go into the portal, we don't typically use our ultimate in the portal. We use it outside of the portal, then we go into the portal, and then we generate an ultimate the whole time we're in there. And now, the longer you're in the portal, the more ultimate you've got. You don't use your ultimate in the portal, but like the longer duration that the portal lasts for, the more health recovery you get in, so the easier it is to kind of stay alive. And this is just going to tick away every 2 seconds, giving you extra healing, keeping you alive, saving your resources, so you don't have to burn through resources healing yourself. And that's the main reason for using it. It's to save resources. You're able to stack 5k or so worth of health recovery with the right kind of setup. If you're using the Steed Munderstone, if you're using this with Troll King, maybe some Divine's Gear, that kind of thing. If you set up for it, still in your tank gear, so still your normal stuff, this is going to be quite useful for dealing with those situations. Another couple of good ones, Refreshing Stride. While sprinting, you gain 100 health and magic recovery per stage. This seems made for tanks in certain places, so 500 health and magic recovery is quite a lot. Now, I would absolutely be using this for Asylum Sanctorium off tanking, possibly even Cloud Rest when you're running across the room and things like that. Like, there are some places where you sprint it around. Maybe for ad pulls in Trials, you're sprinting. The magic recovery could be nice, so you can start pre-buffing and buffing things up and maybe getting yourself ready for the encounter that you're going into. But yeah, if you're kind of running around stacking ads, or you're running into combat, or you're in an off-tank situation where you've got to sprint to move ads about or stack things in, then obviously this is going to be really, really nice, because you're getting that 500 health recovery extra. The magic recovery is the main one for me, though. Like 500 more magic recovery while sprinting, especially in something like Asylum Sanctorium, is going to be really, really nice. If you're spamming Empowering Grasp on your group and everyone's spread out, the extra 500 magic recovery is going to be absolutely wonderful. Obviously, we've got points into Hasty there, and then another really, really vital one for me, Celerity. So increased movement speed by 10%. So if you use Embracing Anchor, and then you've got this as well slotted, this is kind of negating the speed reduction you've got from Bracing Anchors, so that can be quite nice. But generally, for me, this is mostly going to be useful for your kind of ad pulls and stuff. So when you've got it slotted and you're running from ad pull to ad pull, or in a dungeon, you need to move somewhere fast, have this slotted. 10% movement speed is really, really good, especially if you combine it with Race Against Time, or maybe Ring of the Wild Hunt, or Swift Jewelry, something along those lines. You're getting a lot of extra speed. You're going to be able to almost pretty much, I would imagine, reach the speed cap. So yeah, this is really good for tanks. Tanks have to do a lot of sprinting, a lot of moving around. So this is a really, really good champion point. to help you with that situation. Finally, like the last couple of things, obviously you can set up with a crowd control immunity setup. I wouldn't advise it because it's quite advanced. Like, you have to have a certain jewelry setup. You have to have immovable potions and skills and things like that to get like 10% block mitigation. You don't need this, obviously, if you slot Embrace and Anchor, so you definitely don't absolutely need this. But we've got another one over here, Juggernaut. 5% damage reduction. This one got nerfed because of PvP. It was 10%, it's gone down to 5%. So I probably personally wouldn't use a crowd control immunity setup now because we've got so many other champion point slottables which are much more valuable and useful. Peace of mind, crowd control immunity again for extra recovery. But we've got other ones that we can use. So I don't really think a crowd control immunity setup is really that useful anymore. But if you really wanted to, then you could set up with some of those. And then finally, kind of savage defenses, reduce the cost of bash and increase the damage of bash. Again, it's just filling out anything that is not a slottable. So obviously you just want to get points into everything that you don't have to slot. And then 4 slottables plus extras depending on what situation you're going to be in. So obviously for your red CP, it's very customizable, as I mentioned at the start. There's not a, you must use this CP, because depending on what the situation is, it's worth slotting different things. So that is just something you're going to have to figure out. I will have kind of guides. All of the tank builds on the tankclub.com will have kind of suggestions for red CP and blue CP if there is like any variation to the standard kind of CP setups. So just keep your eyes on the website for that kind of stuff, and I'll get it posted on there when we've had time to kind of test CP out in all the different trials and situations. Okay guys, that's everything for champion points for the Waking Flame patch. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.